longer, okay?
Yeah, you're a Numenorian.
There you go.
Yeah. Anyway, was about 2009, my wife and I moved to Anacortes, Washington, which was a great little city, which is a few miles from Spokane. And things have changed, so especially on the western side. So we decided to move to Idaho, and we're living in Mountain Home now, which is considerably different. It doesn't have the scenery, but the people are great, and it's actually like the people I met in Spokane in 1968.
A few years
when
before
I went to
the
survival school at Fairchild.
World Fair.
We went out, and I mean, in a time when things were not too friendly for the military.
Were you serving?
Air Force.
You were serving the Air Force at Fairchild. Did you know Don Williams, who
No,
flew?
no, I was only there for survival school, which was
Oh,
pretty-
okay. My next door neighbor was a pilot, bomber pilot,
Right.
from there in World War II and all
Sure,
that.
sure,
So
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, it was a very good school, and like I said, I enjoyed going into town because everybody just welcomed us, and I think it was more than our money, so which we didn't have much.
Yeah.
And that was like Hawk was saying.
Anyway, that's
6
where
years
I'm
before
at, and
Cool. So you saw Spokane before the World Fair was here.
oh yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Thanks, Gary.
All right. Thank you for that.
And then if we can go over to my friend on the right-hand side,
Mhm.
your left.
Michael Vanen. I'm Anthony of the East Farthing. And I was actually going to say that I've been coming to these meetings now for 5 years to the month.
Wow.
Wow.
So,
Well,
yep, 5 years.
5
hello.
years. That's great.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's so
A lustrum.
2017 already. That's been a few years. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
Wasn't
2017.
that there was a John Wayne movie where kept saying lustrum and what's a lustrum? I think it was like half a decade, 5
Really?
years. something
Oh,
like
is that the
I can't
technical?
remember.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to
Some
look
John
that up.
Wayne movie.
Some good word
if
memory
I
there.
remember correctly.
So, a question for you. So, Anthony, was
Yeah,
the
sure.
first time that you came, was it to a Tolkien Society or to a Tolkien role-playing society?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I remember the very first meeting I went to, Michael Martinez was the guest. Yeah, so I'm not sure if it
that
was...
would have been most likely a moot.
Yeah.
It was a
Martinez is
moot.
rarely. He's once in a great while attended,
Mm-hmm.
but mostly only moots. So
Yeah,
it was most
so-
likely a moot.
So yeah, I attended a meeting during the moot, I guess.
Nice. And yeah, because we...
I remember there were a lot of people there too, so...
That would have been a moot.
Yeah,
that
that
would've
would have been a moot.
Yeah.
And I think that was soon after. I think in the spring we had actually that year had the director of the Wagnerian Society.
Right.
And
Yeah,
we
that
were
was
talking to
upstairs.
him. Mhm.
Yep. And he was.
Yep. And then we had Michael that summer, so that was really good. So I'm Brian. I'm the secretary of the Smial, which is really just a local gathering of the Tolkien Society, which is actually worldwide, based in the UK. And Priscilla Tolkien was the I think acting vice president or something like that. Kind of an honorary title.
Honorary.
But now, of course, Priscilla has passed away, as Gary and Anthony, I think you guys had emailed a couple months ago about, and Sarah from Italy had mentioned the last of the Numenorians, as it were.
Yeah.
So, so I'm the secretary, and I've been attending the Tolkien Society here in Spokane since roughly 2009. So it's been about 13 years now.
Wow.
So,
Well, the year we came back to Washington.
yeah, exactly.
Wow. You should
And-
get a pin for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
13 year. Yes, exactly. It'd be like, oh, the
13 years
unlucky number.
unsober fandom.
Drunk off the
It
fan.
would be like, then next year would be my my +1 Bilbo year because he was the 14th member of the company.
Oh.
Maybe I could get a dwarf button for each one of the years, right?
There we
So
go.
you're up to 5. So we'll give you Dory, Ori, Owen Glowin and Bomber.
Bomber.
But don't make a big fat deal about it, okay?
Oh. So, anywho.
And next.
Hi, I'm Hawk Robinson.
It's like the hand on the Addams Family.
There it is.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yes. So tell us, Hawk, about your involvement.
I'm founder of the Ea Tolkien Society and since 2005, and Other Minds Magazine, and Tolkien Moot, and Middle Earth Talk Radio, and Middle Earth Radio, other Tolkien stuff.
So, want to say thank you again to, choosing to really, I guess, revivify, help to flourish structures in place in Spokane. I mean, there's always been, I'm sure, people in Spokane, whether at the university or just people privately, and in various little groups here and there.
Yeah, not really. It's
I mean, of lovers of his books.
right. Well, yeah, there's people individually.
Yes.
That was
Yeah.
the problem. They had nowhere to meet, and even
Yeah.
in Seattle,
Yeah.
they
Really?
couldn't find people. Yeah, we
Which
used to have
is-
people from Seattle all the time join our meetings.
And I feel like that's perhaps, this is speculation, but I think there's some basis to it, that with just the more and more individualized things get, people aren't, and I know this is not true of everyone, but maybe you don't have as much people seeking out groups to belong to,
Yeah.
and because I can stream things, but
But Meetup exists because of
Yeah.
all the people looking for that.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's how I
what
used to advertise.
That's
all
actually
this.
how I found this
Exactly,
group.
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
Yes.
Meetup brought in a lot of people.
So
Yeah.
I think it's just this ongoing, wonderful,
More
collaborative process.
Yeah.
With many different
And
parts
you
to
know,
it.
we have regular guests.
Yeah.
visitors from Italy and UK
Yeah.
and Finland and all of that as part
Wow.
of this meeting. So.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. One thing you gentlemen need to think about, I think there's a definite reticence barrier to coming into a group like this for the first time, because you really don't know what to expect.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you guys have been great. I remember that when we sold our house in Anacortes, the real estate hired this one photographer. I mean, the guy was great, but he was also he was a Tolkien aficionado, and I told him about this group and where to meet, and sent him stuff.
Hey.
And he never followed through.
Yay!
We got Chris.
That's too bad you didn't follow through, but we got a surprise in-person visit from Chris.
Hey.
Oh yes, I forgot to tell you.
Welcome back.
I said what? No, Chris.
I know you. Yes. I was distracted. I have no
Welcome,
excuse.
Chris,
I was-
all the way
Hey,
from the
Michael
Southern
Bonnet.
Farthing.
Yes, Michael
Yes.
Vannen.
We were just doing introductions anyway.
Yay.
Well, that's I
yeah.
appreciate. So, right? No, we know a lot of people. I mean, a bunch of strangers. If you don't know them, totally understand.
Yeah.
We try to be as friendly and welcome. I mean, it was better when we were at the coffee shop where people could just walk up and join,
Yes.
because we got people walking up and joining.
We did.
Nice.
Unfortunately, the
We always-
proprietor was not super fond of us having a
Yeah, well, we kept
Sessions.
having to move and kept having to move and kept having to move, and that made it hard to maintain
pushed
the
out.
group. So, this will be the last time, I swear, that we're here at my house
Yeah.
for this. It will be at the RPG Center going
Yeah.
forward, because the grand opening's on the 26th.
Yay.
So it has to be ready.
Yeah.
That'd be perfect.
Are
but
you
it has to
saying
be
that
ready.
this is the final countdown?
It's the final countdown.
And we have our own mascot joining us right here in
Morty
Spokane,
Mort
Washington.
Mort.
Yep.
Morty
Mort.
He's really more of a Discworld mascot because Katie
That's
named him
true.
after Discworld.
Yeah.
Mort was Death's apprentice
Do you
in
smell cat?
Discworld.
But Mortimer, you can have
Do
a
you
middle
smell-
name, can't
do
you?
you smell horse?
Yes, we will call him. What's the
smell
name of the
horse?
dog in the Silmarillion? The Hound.
Oh.
The
Car-
one who speaks 3 times.
Yes. I should know this.
Was he kind of wolf-like or?
Yeah, Huon.
Huon. That's it.
Huon.
Juan.
Mortimer.
Yes,
His name was
Juan.
Huon. Okay. After me.
I was thinking of Karkaroth, but that's
You may
the.
speak 3 times, Mortimer. He's like, eat, eat, eat. Food.
Yeah. Food, play, sleep,
Yeah.
bodily
So-
functions.
Gary, were you still finishing up with something there? Did you want to?
No, I
No, he
just
made-
wanted to mention that
Yeah.
because And also, my wife is going through, because she's got a bum knee, thanks
Ooh.
for years, but she's going through physical therapy right now. And she actually ran into somebody who might be interesting, because her therapist, who right now is gone for 2 weeks, probably on vacation, is a writes fantasy.
Wonderful.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we welcome them
Yeah,
all.
we would welcome them.
Yeah, and I'll mention it. So
And mention Tolkien Moot.
Yeah, I will.
Are you going to be able to make it to Tolkien Moot?
I'm not gonna be able to drive. I'm gonna check in on the airlines.
Yeah,
and,
it'll be just like our normal.
I mean, I can't afford $5 gas.
Oh, I know. It's
Oh,
it's
$5.
I
crazy.
can't afford $6 diesel.
Oh, my lord.
Yeah, well,
yes.
my wife's got a diesel truck, and
Right.
Yeah.
she's not happy either.
Well, and you're on the Idaho side, right?
Yes.
So it's about 50 cents cheaper where you are than it is here
Yeah, it's even worse here.
Yeah.
because of the tax. We have the highest
Yeah,
tax.
We
so.
do, don't we? We
Yeah.
love taxes
Yeah,
here.
well, I saw something also, and
More.
actually my wife posted on Facebook, your car tabs are going up.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
Really?
Yes.
So we don't want. This
Okay,
is
let
kind
me
of
get
divergent.
careful.
Yeah, that's
We have voted over and over and over and over to keep the car tabs down. The state
Legislature.
Congress has decided to ignore that and has overruled, and as they have done many times,
Because we just don't have
overruled
enough
our
revenue.
initiatives.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So anyway,
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
I saw an
Yeah.
additional weight fee on my last one.
Oh yes.
Yep.
And house tax is going up too, by the way.
yeah.
property taxes?
Property taxes, yes. Gary?
Yeah, we got to, but I mean, my income tax this year was only for half a year we were here, $19.
Oh,
You know,
Whoa!
Exactly.
so anyway,
all moving out home.
Tolkien stuff.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
that's,
we have one more person actually to
Yes. So
introduce.
finish. Yeah.
Sales tax is less. So.
Yeah. Okay, Chris, go ahead and introduce
Yes,
yourself. please.
yes.
Well, I'm Chris Cooperstein from the South Farthing.
yeah.
AKA
2.5 hours drive south.
Tri-Cities.
And
Beautiful farm location.
yes.
Right
Yeah.
off the Snake, or is it?
No.
Which river
well,
is it?
at the
It's
intersection.
Columbia.
At the intersection of the Yakima, Columbia, and Snake.
Okay, all
rivers.
three.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
yeah, they all meet there. Yeah.
So it brings you up here
Tri-Cities.
at this time.
Oh, picking up kids from
But
Grandma.
we're so
Oh.
glad to see
Yes.
you in person.
Yeah.
Thank you for making time to come join us in person.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Will
absolutely.
you be able to make the Tolkien move?
I don't think so with
Oh.
our present summer schedule.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's just to make clear, can we do housekeeping? So, speaking of that, we'll repeat this at the end, but our next Tolkien Society meeting, which is always in July, it's always embedded into Tolkien Moot, which is a role-playing...
Well, it's an annual convention of
it's a
Tolkien
convention
fans, and
which
we
includes
include role-playing games.
But we have also...
We do the Tolkien Society
We did
meeting.
do the Tolkien Society in there to make sure...
And usually with special guest.
Yeah, usually with special guests, and we will have that as well.
Mort.
Mort's chewing on the.
No, Mort.
So
Mort, no. Don't chew.
he's foaming at the mouth.
Yeah,
It's black foam.
don't chew.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, Mort, you don't want
No.
to swallow that.
No.
Ugh.
I'm going to send you upstairs and you don't behave.
So the Tolkien Society meeting will not be on the third
Usual
Saturday
third,
as
yeah.
usual, but it will actually be on the 4th, which is, I think, the
30th and
30th.
31st.
Yeah.
30th
And
and 31st.
the RSVP is open on the website,
Mhm.
so please do RSVP, even if you're going to be remote, just so we have some kind of head count.
Yep.
I've
It's, of
RSVP'd.
course, is always a free event.
Now, if you're joining just for the Tolkien Society, you don't have to RSVP.
You don't have to RSVP. We really appreciate if people do, even if it's just for the Tolkien Society thing. It just helps us know who to expect. That's
Okay.
all. It's just a way to communicate.
Yeah,
it's
so
not
let us-
required.
Let us know if you're
It's
going
appreciated.
to
If you're going to be in person, even if it's for Tolkien Society, we'd like you to RSVP.
Yeah, if
for
you're in
seating,
person, absolutely.
because of seating.
Yeah.
We want
We
to know
have
if we
people
need
who are
10 seats or
listening.
30 seats.
That's true.
Which
That's
we
true.
have needed 35 seats for
If
Tolkien
people
Society.
are joining remotely, though, it's less of a concern.
It's
correct?
less of an issue. It's just nice to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all.
Anyway, Tolkien Moot will be so that society meeting will be on Saturday the 30th.
Yep.
And it will be at 1 p.m. like usual.
Let's go upstairs.
And it will be
One more.
a special panel discussion. We will have with us Brenton, Professor Brenton Dickinson from Signum University.
Mm-hmm.
And he will be part of that that panel discussion on the fall of Numenor.
Nice.
So we've been basically a 3-year arc where the rise of Numenor, the golden age of Numenor, and the fall of Numenor. So of course, timed
Is it
to coincide.
fall or autumn?
The autumn of Numenor. Yes, you
Yes.
could say
Oh.
that has the ring of
Because
truth.
I'm not sure that the British would use the word fall.
Well, when
No.
it's
Or a season.
referring to an actual island, like engulfed by the ocean, yes, I would say so. It's kind of a fall, wouldn't you say? A tumbling, a descent.
Well, it's sunk into the ocean, so you could say it's a fall.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But was it in the fall, is what you're saying? And I
Yes.
don't know what time of year it was. However,
That's a good question.
it's going to be a great discussion, a great panel, and tune in to find out more. Watch your email because there will be more updates on that as we get closer to it. So it should be a really good discussion on that. We're going to be looking at a number of things, of course, starting with always Tolkien's writing, what he, the whole plot of what leads to the downfall of Numenor. Look at the anchors, the mythic anchors that Tolkien uses, such as Atlantis and other things, which are really interesting in the British Isles. And not only this, but also a look at how Lewis and Tolkien's secondary worlds are kind of intersecting. And that's something that Brenton Dickinson, and I'm waiting to hear back from, but I'm hoping that David Russell Mosley can also join us again from 2 years ago. Because he was also taught at Signum University, and there's this really wonderful kind of exploration of how Lewis, not Tolkien, but Lewis kind of saw some of his secondary worlds as actually existing, as connected to the, whatever you want to call it, metaverse of Middle Earth. Because Middle Earth is the past of this
Yeah.
world.
Right.
And so anyway, there's more we'll get into at that point, but fun stuff. So that's the housekeeping for that. And then today I'll be reading the notes unless there's anything else housekeeping wise you wanted to talk about. Oh, and then next month, of course, we'll be at the venue.
RPG
will be
Center.
At the RPG Center.
101 North Stone Street, Spokane,
Right.
Washington, 99202.
Exactly. Anything
Could
else
you
before?
go ahead with the RPG URL again?
RPGresearch.com or TolkienMoot.org? Which one?
Okay, Tolkien Moot will. Okay.
Yeah, if you TolkienMoot.com.org, you'll go the same place.
Okay.
Just remember Tolkien Moot.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay. Is there anything else before I read the notes? Or are you good with that, Hawk?
I think we're good for now.
Okay. All right. As I read the notes, if there's anything that the rest of you want to comment on, feel free. May 21, 2022, the Ea Tolkien Society met, and Hawk, Gary, Anthony, and Brian attended. Brian read the April notes, and those notes refer to Root and Branches, which is a book of essays, I think by Thomas Shippey, and
Yep.
that link is right there in the notes. Secondly, we had an Amazon Rings of Power update, in which in May, Chris Cooperstein mentioned an article in The Independent, which is a British newspaper, in which they talked about current goings-on with that particular TV series that is being produced, which is supposed to come out in September. Third, we talked about The Lord of the Rings in its time, how Tolkien was writing this and was faced with criticism of it being seen as juvenile or juvenilia, basically books written for escapist fantasy and not for real serious scholars. And so really there is that desire in his mind for a serious reception. He was doing something very important. And this linked into the Auden review of The Return of the Kings. We talked about this a bit, namely because we're talking about Tolkien's peers right now. We've looked at a number of people in the past that followed on after Tolkien, that Tolkien had an influence on, and now we've shifted to some extent on looking at his peers, W.H. Auden, the famous English poet, and his review of The Return of the King, which was a very positive review. However, there was also some language of how he described Tolkien's house that, there was some things that they had to work out there, and so just again that whole literary circle he was part of. We had then a big discussion about really starting on the Inklings, and we were referring to a book called The Fellowship of the Inklings, if somebody wants to hold that up, if they've got a copy handy. And The Fellowship of the Inklings is by Philip Zaleski, and so we're using that book. Got a little mini-me there. And that book is...
That is how Gandalf and Frodo had their size differential.
Aha!
Yeah.
Very nice there.
On the
yes.
wagon and such.
Was it foreshortening?
Foreshortening.
Very
Yeah,
good,
foreshortening
very good.
in the movie.
Okay, so if you refer to this book, which is, I assume, worth buying,
Yes.
those of you who have...
Yes.
There's a lot of really great material there.
Yeah.
But Hawk...
Lots of references to lots of other material.
Yes, yes. Hawk read from the Flyleaf and Chapter 1, portions of that, and also key parts of Chapter 10, referring to the first Inkling that we wanted to take a look at, which was Charles Williams. A charismatic friend, somewhat eccentric, a publisher at Oxford University Press. And there was a reference to talking about the difference between charisma and comeliness, which is something in the D&D core stats that Hawk brought up. Here's a man who was not necessarily comely, but he was charismatic. I think that was what we were saying, correct?
Yeah, comeliness is appearance, charisma. Yeah,
Right.
Exactly.
And so people can have an unexpected charismatic following, which is what we see with Charles Williams and his effect on people. Everybody liked to be around him, etc. Chris Cooperstein read from chapter 12.
A little bit. Not the whole
Not
thing.
the whole chapter.
Yeah.
Read from, I will correct my notes, read from chapter 12 of the Fellowship. And some more comments following that would be that there was more information on Williams and his relationship to Jack and Tollers, to C.S. Lewis and j.r.r. Tolkien, because it was complicated. But there's a really good article at firstthings.com called Haven't an Inkling, which shows the tension at times where Tolkien felt perhaps that C.S. Lewis was spending more time with Williams, and it wasn't so much that was a problem, but it was that their early friendship, Tolkien didn't feel like he and Lewis were quite as close. And I put in the notes, and I put here, Brian will prepare a graphic on the literary circles Tolkien moved in, including the Inklings, Auden, T.S. Eliot, etc. And I have to postpone that for another time,
Yeah.
Only because I've been super busy with the end of school and getting ready for a big road trip.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I really do want, though, I want an infographic, and I don't think I've seen one out there, but which shows how Tolkien connected to certain people, that he was in that sphere, and then their spheres. I mean, we've got
That's
Venn
part of what
diagrams.
this book actually
exactly,
Yeah.
because even like
goes into
we'll talk about
detail
Owen
on.
Barfield today.
Yeah.
Barfield connects to other writers,
yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it
Yeah.
never ends, does it?
Bloomsbury Group.
Yeah. And so anyway, so back to the notes. Anthony read letter 201 from j.r.r. Tolkien's letters, and we had a discussion on that. I don't remember specifically anything topic that was main point there. And then we did discuss about how Tolkien Moot 18 XVIII will be on Saturday and Sunday, July 30 and 31, 2022.
3 eyes.
Yes.
Aye.
I'll keep an eye on that.
The eyes have it.
The evil eye.
Better than,
Sauron.
better
Yeah,
than
right.
Final Frontier.
Yeah. Final Frontier. Oh, no.
What's that a reference to?
I think it's just word playing.
Oh.
But yes, Final Frontier would be Star Trek, right?
Yes.
No.
Next
yeah.
month, Tolkien Society will be at Hawk's house because 101 North Stone Street's not ready yet. And then last, putting in the notes just that our contemporary author focus for today would be for June, Owen Barfield and Dorothy Sayers. Or at least that we will start on that. We will also read letter 202. And then just a sneak peek at July. This nicely syncs up so well. We will cover, or begin to cover at least, C.S. Lewis as a member of Tolkien's literary group, an influence on him and he on Lewis. Why? Because the Tolkien moot topic will be how did Numenor fall? Exploring our own Earth interest in the Atlantis legend, along with parallels in Lewis and Tolkien's work and how their secondary worlds may intersect. Special panel will include Signum University scholar Brenton Dickinson, and hopefully a return of David Russell Mosley. I'm trying to see if he can join us as well, as the two of them have blogged on this before, which is based on a
David Russell.
David Russell Mosley. We had him 2 years ago.
Right.
With John Garth.
Right.
And John Garth had actually initially written about this, and then the two of them were discussing it and taking it further. So we'll wait on that till next time. But it does look at how Lewis saw his fantasy realms intersecting in some way with Tolkien's fantasy realms. More on that later. That's the notes for June.
Thank you. Here. Thank you.
May. Those are notes for May.
So, as you see here, the RPG Center, we're doing our grand opening on the 25th, so that's a week from today. If you know anywhere that you could share those, please do. We will then be 3 days a week, Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, starting July 9th. But this is our big grand opening. It won't be 100% finished, but it will be ready enough to use. It has been 4 months of non-stop work and a lot of insurance wrangling. The insurance will cover up to 999 people in an event, which is way more than the capacity of the facility. So that's good, at least.
Crazy that you had to jump through so many hoops to get.
I still am, because we still can't do live streaming. We still can't do remote training. We can't have volunteers outside of Washington State yet. We can't have our research archives publicly available, and we still can't have most of our videos available. So we're still 90% shut down until I can get the insurance to allow me to open that up. But we've got the community center. Yeah, we've got the baseline. It's paid the $4,000. We've got insurance, and now I've put in 9 questions for what we need to do to expand and get back some of our functions.
9, very appropriate number.
That's the first of 30.
I thought it was to coincide with the 9 walkers.
Yeah, no. But we're working on it. It's just been a lot slower because of the whole insurance thing. But
Or 9
we're
for
getting
mortal
there.
men doomed to die. The ring race.
Well, hopefully.
But everybody's welcome. It'll just be open from noon to 5 that day. Just kind of, we'll have game tables set up. We'll have Tor and AIM. Well, both Tor 1 and 2, and actually we'll have all of the Tolkien versions laid
So we'll
out
be
on
able to play?
tables.
Or,
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it depends on who shows up, etc.
Sure.
We're only allowed by the insurance company to run 3 tables at a time maximum.
Okay.
Okay.
Even if we have 10 GMs and 10 tables, the insurance company right now only insures us
I'm
for 3
assuming
tables.
that's going to then inform what we do in July.
That's different. That's an
insurance.
event.
Oh.
That's different than the community center.
Got it.
Event, we can have 999 people. Community center, we can only be open 3 days a week and 3 tables and only half days.
Right.
And,
Who decides
It's
this?
kind of like
the
how
insurance
often you
company.
drive. If you drive 10,000
They wouldn't give us a
miles
quote
year-
otherwise if we didn't cut it all
Right,
down.
Yeah. They're nervous, so they need like.
They
some
don't
time.
understand what any of this is about, so they just said no. They think this is as dangerous as cliff jumping or gambling.
Seriously?
So it's the same danger rating, so they just wouldn't
What
give
if
a
you're
quote.
gambling while you're cliff jumping?
That's a
Have
double
you-
gamble.
That's
It's been done. Especially teenagers and college students.
Yeah.
All right, so anyway, we're very excited about that, and that, of course, is critical for both our society meetings going forward and Tolkien Moot going forward. They will be there as we continue to improve the property and the other buildings. So this year, right, we just got the one building, and the other one's not ready yet. By next year, the museum should be ready, which will include our Tolkien collection, and so we'll have that expanded building capacity. And if we get enough donations, eventually we have the option to buy 2 or 3 other empty lots in that block. We could have upwards of half a city block if we had enough in donations. Not there yet, but that would be great.
Nice.
We could do some really amazing stuff.
We could build a replica, like 2 scale of Dol Guldur. That'd be great, wouldn't it?
There is an airport nearby, so we might have some height limits.
Oh.
Yeah.
There's a little non-commercial airplane airport there,
That's-
so I can't fly my
You
drone.
haven't
I'm
seen
not able
your
to
height
get.
limit.
I can't do drone. The automated drones won't even take off. I have to use a manual drone to be able to do anything. But yeah, so we're very excited about that. That's where all this is going to take place. We're still moving everything,
Okay.
and that's why the chairs are what they are right now, because we moved the nicer chairs down there. So
Excellent.
we hope we'll see you down there next month for sure.
Thank you. All right, so at this time, what we usually do is we go around the horn and we ask if anybody has any Tolkien relevant news or topic that they wanted to discuss. Once we've done that, then what we'll do is we'll go into our next kind of authors that we're featuring, which is this month Owen Barfield and Dorothy Sayers, 2 of the other Inklings of that large group that Lewis and Tolkien kind of had around them, and then we will then after that have an opportunity to read the next letter in Tolkien's letters, keeping it grounded to the chronological development of the stories that he wrote. So, does anybody have anything they would like to bring up?
I spent my time on
These things. Thank you for doing
Sayers
that.
and
Barfield.
Barfield.
Thank you for preparing. That's great. I appreciate that. Anybody else have anything Tolkien relevant that they wanted to share? Anything on the web or in their own lives? Hawks shared about what he's doing, and we're excited about that. And
Yeah, I'm getting the module,
Getting the
adventure
module, which
module
will
ready.
be
Escape from Numenor.
Escape from Numenor. I mean,
Nice.
it's like Kurt Russell, but without the mullet, right? Escape from New York.
Numenorians with bullets. I guess it could happen.
Yes, but
That was the Ellen Dilly trait, or was that the
the Morgoth worshippers
yeah,
definitely
the
have mullets. You give love.
Oh my gosh. Anyways,
Yes.
enough of the bad music.
Yeah. Oh, come on.
Well,
Yeah,
Bon Jovi's
Bon
good,
Jovi.
but not as
Yeah, okay, yes,
not as
yes.
good as other bands.
That's
but-
true.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything too much regarding news about the Rings of Power TV series, but I know they're developing an animated film called The War of the Rohirrim, which
Oh yeah. Do you have any updates on that? I heard
um
some good things about that actually.
yeah, so I think
They being
they being
Different. It's a different group.
Yeah, so it's an anime film. It's set 183 years before the events chronicled in, so basically before the Lord of the Rings. A sudden attack by Wolf, a clever and ruthless Dunlending lord seeking vengeance for the death of his father, forces Helm, Hammerhand, and his people to make a daring last stand in the ancient stronghold of the Hornburg, a mighty fortress that will later come to be known as Helm's Deep. Finding herself in an increasingly desperate situation, Hera, the daughter of Helm, must summon the will to lead the resistance against a deadly enemy intent on their total destruction. Then this email goes on to say that Helm's daughter is not named in Appendix A of The Lord of the Rings. However, the story describes how relations between Helm and Wolf's father, Freka, sour dramatically after Freka attempts to use her as a political pawn. Her ultimate fate is one of the mysteries of the ensuing war. And actually, I think Hera will be played by none other than, voiced by none other than Miranda Otto, who played Eowyn in The Lord of the Rings.
good,
Very good.
So
good Norse names.
She did a great job as Eowyn.
Yeah, I think so,
just
too.
The other day I posted on Facebook where that part where she's singing the lament over Theodred,
yeah,
and the particular video I found had the Old English,
yeah,
because that's what it is. She's
Yeah.
singing in Old English a lament as they carry him into the barrow. And I've been in England and have walked into a barrow, and it's just an amazing experience.
Is there
Wow.
gold there?
is it gold?
Are there swords?
No swords, no gold,
Any
no
rates?
race.
No rates,
Oh.
no barrel whites.
No, thankfully not. So anyway, thank you, Anthony, for sharing that.
You're
Any
welcome.
comments on the War of the Rohirrim? What website are you getting it from?
I just got it from theonering.net.
Very good. All right. And how long ago was that post?
A few days ago, June 15th, so 3
Okay,
days ago.
thanks. I'll put that in the notes. Gary or Chris or Hawk, any comments on the War of the Rohirrim anime?
No, I just,
wait to see it.
I saw that, and it's gonna be animated, and, I don't, to me, like, I loved cartoons as a kid, but, as you get older, I'm thinking that it's harder to take something like that seriously. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair.
That is a cohort generational thing now. Well, you do have Japanese anime has crept into the adult world a lot more, so that has we've seen a real shift in that
Yeah,
generationally.
I'm familiar with Japanese anime.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's mostly for young people, and
No.
So one thing that I'm interested in is-
Middle-aged people.
I've learned that in Japan, for example, apparently there are different
Yeah, there's
Audiences,
manga that the
different
animes
audiences,
yes,
and that there are adults.
exactly.
There's some that's definitely tilted towards younger people, and then
Yes.
there's those that are for older people, and
Yeah.
it does seem to be among a number of older people in the U.S. Catching fire.
It's been growing since the 70s.
It's
And you have
As
you
people
have
grow
what's
older.
targeting the youth,
Right.
and you have the stuff that is definitely only for adults. And I don't mean the
Right.
perverse stuff. I just mean it's very heavy
Yeah, it's
philosophical,
mature.
deep literature, and you have to really pay attention.
Yeah.
And then you have the beautiful ones by the really famous one, the movies.
What's his name?
He's the most
Yes.
famous one. They're works of art.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not an anime fan, so I'm saying this
Yeah,
as an
yeah.
outsider who's been around it peripherally because of my.
Ralph Bakshi. Is that what you're
No.
No, this is Japanese anime.
Oh,
right?
you're talking about the Ghibli, Studio Ghibli.
Yes.
Yeah, what's his name? Incredible,
No,
beautiful
Kurosawa,
works of
that's
art,
the-
and yeah.
Yeah.
So that has been slowly catching on in the West, decade by decade, and it's
Yeah.
crossing generations over time.
Even my children
Well,
enjoy
Miyazaki.
it.
What's that?
You made me feel very old, so.
Well, it's okay. I mean, it's not everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's definitely not.
Yeah, well, the thing is, as I remember, from
Disney.
personal experience,
Yeah.
that the anime craze in Japan, and it's real,
Oh yeah.
is mostly with young people who I think don't want to grow up.
Yeah, that's the otaku group. So they're the outsiders. The otaku are the ones who they stay at home, they don't socialize, they're into video
Oh,
games
yeah.
and anime. They're considered kind of outsider rejects.
Yeah, not mainstream.
But the anime as a whole and manga, you see businessmen on subways. Like it is far.
That's what
It's
I
gone
saw.
far beyond that now
Yeah.
for decades.
I-
So you were in Japan.
I,
Tell us,
yeah.
What did
I
you see?
spent a year in Osaka, and I saw all sorts of. They're more literate than we are in
Yeah.
terms of reading
And-
books, etc.
Yeah.
And they incorporate a lot of Tolkien, a lot of Wagner. They've always had a fascination with German culture.
That's
Huge
interesting.
fascination
Really?
with
Huh.
German culture. Both
Yeah,
pre
German
World
slash
War
Dutch.
II.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've always
Yeah.
so they incorporate a lot of their mythos into a lot of their
Yeah, that's
Slash
interesting.
stuff. And some of it's pretty robust, historical,
Yeah.
complicated.
Yep.
I've always wondered how they can do that. So
I
there was
think
this-
actually the especially the German side, the propensity towards order and structure is very appealing to the
Similar to the
Japanese.
Japanese.
Exactly, I think that's
Yeah.
where they felt
Yeah.
a
Kinship,
similarity.
affinity,
Yeah.
maybe.
But they have multiple renditions of Arthurian integrations into
Wow.
modern twists.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Japanese culture takes from other cultures, and then
Yeah, but we do too.
Improve.
yeah, I mean,
upon it.
but they do their thing to it that
Yeah.
they have always done very
But what
well.
is maybe different too is that here the audience is growing as people get older.
yeah, Western, not just the U.S.
Western,
It
yeah.
is just generationally growing. Part of it is it's just so much easier to get access to, whereas before it was really hard. Like if it
Yeah.
didn't show up on mainstream channel, you would never see it.
Yeah.
But the internet and cable and streaming,
Yeah.
now you can see all kinds of other things.
Oh, yeah.
And now manga is being made. Anime now is being made by Czechoslovakian studios, European studios, North African studios, South American studios.
Wow.
They're all now adopting that approach. That the key thing is that it isn't the Disney style of cartoons are for kids.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is a generational, fascinating generational shift that's going on.
Yeah.
It's still
Yeah,
happening.
Chris was in mainland Japan. I was in Okinawa, which is
Yeah.
an
Right.
island 64
Yep.
miles long.
Yep.
So I didn't have the opportunity, I haven't traveled on Japanese mass transit since 1972.
Right. And my middle son spent over a year there.
Wow.
Gary?
And everybody's got their own vehicles. They do have a bus service, but they've got one train that goes from the airport in Naha to downtown Naha. It's a monorail. They're really proud of it. It's losing money like crazy, like all their
Yeah,
trains
which
do.
do.
But,
Most of them do.
Yeah.
it's, I think I'm seeing, we left there in 2009. So I think maybe I saw a different side of it because Okinawa certainly is not Japan.
Right. It is its own. Yeah. And even their martial arts style is distinctive.
So,
Yeah.
and
My
it's actually not as uptight, although, working with
Yes.
Japanese tourists in Guam, I saw there's a heck of a lot of difference between people from Nagoya, Osaka, and from Tokyo.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Everybody-
Totally.
That's very
they have
true.
Right. So yeah, the reserved hold it in versus much more, and that's another like between South Korean culture and Japanese culture. Right. South Korean culture is very proud of the emotional expression
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
that's considered out of control in main Japan island
Yeah.
cultures.
I don't understand hardly any Korean, but
Yeah.
it seems to me
It's
every
harder
time they're
than
talking,
Japanese.
they're mad at each other, and they may be just talking about the weather.
They're just passionate about everything.
If you've ever been to Korea, you know what I mean.
Yeah. My son spent a year or so there. He was teaching English to children, and then he had a girlfriend there for a long time, and
Yeah, same with my
almost got
brother,
married.
actually.
And he lived in Osaka.
Yeah.
Is rural. That one a little
No,
more.
it's
No.
That's a big
it's
town.
the second largest city. Kyoto is an hour away from Osaka.
Maybe it was Kyoto. Maybe it
Yeah.
was Osaka, and then maybe
Yeah.
his girlfriend's family was in the countryside, and it was gorgeous. And then he was teaching up north because of a friend of the family. Anyway,
Yeah.
but that's the only reason I'm aware of this is because of his exposure and brought me and
Right.
so I'm aware of it.
Wow.
So.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
it's fascinating. So there is a lot of Tolkien influence now in that portion, just to tie it all in.
Yeah.
You really do see a lot of that. There's Yamaha. Yamaha. They make instruments and other things.
Yeah.
They make some software called Vocaloid.
Yeah.
And it's a singing simulator. So just like you have synthesizers for keyboards,
Yeah.
this is meant to actually sing. And you have heard me compose a piece with it, the Elbereth piece, because I didn't have any vocalists that could sing, because I can't sing in that pitch.
Yeah.
So I did it, and it sounds like it's a machine, but they have a plug-in specifically to be able to do Elvish, and another one specifically do Gaelic,
Really?
things like that.
I think also
Language plugins.
And if you already mentioned this, sorry if I didn't hear you, but I think the fact that you have also Britain is an island
Mhm.
nation, Japan's an island nation
Yeah.
in relation to a mainland. There's
Yeah.
a lot of similarities. I think Japan also drives on the left. Am
They
I right?
do, and they adopted post World War II, despite surrendering to the Americans, they adopted a parliamentary British form of government.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they have yet.
Yeah. So anyway, interesting
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to wait and see about the War of the Rohirrim.
Yeah.
I
Who knows?
am maybe a little bit more optimistic about it than I am about the Amazon series, mostly because although the Amazon
Yeah.
series could be really good and it could surprise us, which I'm willing to be
Right.
surprised.
Fingers crossed.
Yep. I think with anime, there's so much good quality now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of crap too, though. It's
There
like
is,
anything
there
else.
is,
so.
but when you've got something like that has this kind of you're not going to get the license for it unless they're going to like, okay, this is a good studio. We think they can do a good job. So I think it could be very, very good because it does take a section of the Rohirrim and brings this story to life. So
Yeah.
kudos to them for trying. I hope they do a good job.
Yeah.
And who's licensing it? Which what? You don't have to look it up. But I just
so, do
wonder.
we have any other Tolkien-related news before we dive into the Inklings?
I think we covered Tolkien Moot, covered the location, so let's.
Warner Brothers.
Okay.
That's the name of the distributor, I guess. But
Oh, I see.
Warner Brothers Animation.
Okay.
Is this going to be a full-length feature film, like
Yeah,
you see in the theater? Okay.
I think so. Yeah, or
Well, I don't see anything more news-wise really about the Rings of Power. The latest thing that I have seen is
Sola Entertainment. It's that's the anime production studio.
yeah. So we'll have to
It's
see.
new.
Rings a bell. Huh.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and then transition into
Yep.
the Inklings. So as all those who are here know, and for those who might be watching this now or later, I think Corey was going to be watching, so maybe we can check for comments too, Hawk, just in
Okay.
case he is there.
Yeah, I'm watching.
Oh, good. I think so. The Inklings was a group of friends who initially started meeting in C.S. Lewis's rooms at Oxford, where he taught at Magdalen College, but it transitioned to the Eagle and Child Pub, which is along a main thoroughfare in Oxford, and at times when beer was short during the war years, they did also meet at other places, but that was the main place where they met, and it included a lot of people. Last month we talked about about Charles Williams, and this month about Owen Barfield and Dorothy Sayers. So, shall we have ladies go first? No, I'm
Sure.
not.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
I'm saying, why not? Let's look at Dorothy Sayers first. Owen Barfield, I think we have a lot more on, because I think that Owen was much more a regular part of the Inklings.
So, World Magazine has recommended several times, and Association of Classical Christian Schools seems to have them, Dorothy Sayers, on their list of recommended books to.
Because of her essay, Recovering the Lost Tools of
Yes.
Learning.
And so this week I listened to her first mystery novel, Whose Body?
Oh, and that's with Lord Peter Wimsey, is it?
Yes. And I think as I compare that to what's his name?
Poirot or
No, not Poirot.
Arthur Conan Doyle, or
Yes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. That she has some of the similar themes, but it's more slow paced, and that it is more introspective. So definitely a difference, because
more delving into the human psyche.
yes.
Hmm.
And so she goes into great detail on a doctor who is trying a doctor investigating a crime, or an inspector investigating a crime is very much like a doctor investigating a body.
Interesting.
And a lot of the similarities between those two was one of the themes of the first book.
Interesting.
But she doesn't shy away from a bit of bloodiness and
Yeah.
a bit of crassness in the human psyche, where
So almost a psychological thriller.
yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, as much a viscerally of whodunit in action,
Right.
this is more in the psyche itself.
I see. Yeah.
So, I like that.
I had a book like her
there's,
once, but I don't have it anymore. I'm not sure where I put it.
There's a series of books put out by Tony Hillerman about Navajo inspector and the different way about having to go through crime novels, through solving mysteries in a Navajo reservation is far different than the typical American Western, and involves a lot of native delving into native.
Which reminds me of
Or-
the movie with Val Kilmer, which was on in South Dakota, which was about an FBI
Yep.
investigation as
Sure,
well.
sure.
Yeah, very much a psychological thriller
Yeah.
there.
So Sayers is delving into the silliness and craziness of the time
Mm-hmm.
when
So like the absurdity
doctors were new,
of okay.
Oh.
surgeries were new,
Yeah.
and solving real crimes was new and novel.
Right.
So,
Right. So a new field. Interesting.
but she's doing it. It seems to me in slightly later than Sir Arthur Conan
Well,
Doyle.
right, because he
Yeah.
was around, but he was really prolific.
Yeah.
Early 20th century.
Correct.
She's writing in the 20s and 30s, isn't she?
Yeah.
Kind
Yeah.
of like about a little bit after Agatha Christie.
Actually, contemporaneous.
Contemporaneous?
I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does Dorothy Sayers compare with Agatha Christie? Do you know? Are you familiar with Christie?
I
Yes.
am, yeah.
Well, Poirot, I've read and watched
Yeah,
a
same.
lot of Poirot, and
There was an interesting article. I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead if you.
there's not quite as much. Christie is all about plot,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Very intricate.
whereas Sayers is not so much.
More focused on like characterization and
Yes.
the psychological
Yeah.
thriller
Yeah.
or aspect. Interesting.
So there's a quote from a website. I sent this to Hawk earlier, but I will put this in the notes. This is from a website called Vogelin View, and on this blog, he's writing about Dorothy Sayers, and he said, about the Whimsy novels, opinion is divided. Those who like Downton Abbey like Peter Wimsey. The country houses, the antique cars, the servants, Caucasian servants. On the other hand, many people find Lord Peter a pain, and his girlfriend Harriet Vane, modeled clearly on Sayers herself, insufferable. The stories do deserve good marks, however, for a serious moral tone and for psychological and social acuteness. There is a real sense of hurt. It is not a play of cardboard figures butchering other cardboard figures, and isn't it all very jolly?
Yeah.
So I think there's a realism here that she brought.
Yes.
Whereas in Christie, if the plot is supreme, characters,
Yep.
who cares,
Right.
right? Some guy dies, it's more like, oh well,
Right.
you know, who
Like-
did it? But it's not really about the. Whereas the people who die in Sayers novels, you get to know them a bit first.
Yeah.
Right. That's interesting.
Reminds me a little bit of the difference between like the generic movie Clue and the one I watched on the plane last year, Knives Out,
Oh, Knives Out.
which was
That's a
fantastic.
great movie.
It was a fantastic character plot twist, stab in the back,
Right.
and it was fantastic from that perspective.
Yeah, I see
Yeah.
what you're saying. Yeah.
And Sayers is more that style.
Right. So Christie may be a better writer,
Uh-huh.
but Sayers accomplishes something in her writing that you found
Yeah.
worthy to keep listening to the end.
Yeah. And she may have gathered a lot of that from her friendship with, especially Williams.
Yeah,
Huh.
sure. Was she part of his kind of following? She seems like a pretty independent woman, so maybe not one of those sycophants that followed him.
I try to remember I don't know exactly where I saw it in this
Right.
compendium, but kind of the concept that she tried to knock on the door of one of the Inklings meetings and was shut out
Oh.
because
yes.
she's a woman.
She's a woman, and
Yes.
and this is again, this article is not from a neutral point of
Right.
view, but he does say at the end, I found this very interesting.
Yeah.
Again, all respect to the Inklings, but they're fallible people, and so this writer says, the reviewer says, so there is Dorothy Lee Sayers in brief. Honor to her memory. But what is to be our working policy on this author? How do we file her in memory for reference and use? She represents a unique overlap in the Venn diagrams of the era, the only writer of that period who was a Christian and a woman and a mother and a scholar of broad experience and a popular writer who actually gained her living from writing,
Yeah.
and an independent operator. A person like that is bound to notice things, and Sayers said a lot that the other Inklings missed and knew it. We wouldn't be surprised if Lewis and Company found her a little alarming. Because yes, it's true. She was. I think she did visit at some point, and was part of that discussion, but it was a little bit more awkward. You have a little bit of the
Yeah.
good old boys kind
Yeah,
of thing going
exclusivity, the male.
on. A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was, I mean, when I read about her in preparation for this meeting, that's what I got, and it's also, I think, borne out by Tolkien's critique of her, what was it, I've got it here in my notes, the Gaudy Night, which was a little bit different than anything else, but I
Right.
think she was chafing, because she was a woman, and basically she did feel shut out, and
Yeah.
I think that also influenced her.
Mhm.
And I don't know, she had an intuitive type grasp of characterization that, you're talking about, that
Sure.
other people did not, because
Yeah.
she felt it. Plus, if you looked at her love life, and sad too,
Yes.
so.
There's some
Oh, yeah.
sad. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think it must have been, just to give a little bit of, I mean, not to excuse them, but I think it must have been more awkward for them in the 1930s and 40s to work out what does it look like to have male, female colleagues in a discussion.
Well, yeah, there's all that sense
Oh,
of
yes.
propriety.
Yeah, propriety,
Yeah.
but that, which in some ways is a good thing, but in some ways, in this case, really worked against her.
Right.
And that's unfortunate because we know if she was a good
Great
thinker,
contributions.
she could have brought contributions out of the others when we know what, for example, Lewis and Tolkien did for each other, or Charles Williams' influence. Anyway, any other comment that you found, Anthony, on Sayers?
I know she was a notable translator, at least, of Dante.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think her translations
And I
were pretty
think
popular.
I think that's what really allowed her in.
Yeah, because she knew
Per
classical
se.
literature and
Despite her femininity or whatever.
Because she actually did a man's work in
Right.
that.
They were impressed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was the language. The
Yeah.
currency was, oh wow, she's a formidable writer and can
Yeah.
translate. So I think all of them loved languages.
yeah.
So I really wish we would love to hear Sarah, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry she's not here
That would have
because
been great for
yeah.
her insights.
it would be great to have her insights as both as a woman and be familiar perhaps with Dante a little bit. Makes me
Yeah.
want to go back.
Well, I mean, isn't that also what she said before was that was a language that's no longer in use. It's kind of like Old English or
Yeah.
Middle English.
True. Yeah. Although the Tuscan.
That makes it more impressive that she was able to translate.
Yeah. Although
Right.
the Tuscan dialect in which Dante wrote is the basis for the modern Italian language.
Sure,
So.
sure. But it's grown since then. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a quote I would like to read here.
Please. Sure.
It's very short. It's from my Quotable Lewis. It's a very good book. And it indexes a lot of Lewis's letters. Now, this is a fairly old book in the sense that it was published already, I think, probably 25, 30 years ago. But it does have one entry on Dorothy Sayers from
Oh.
C.S. Lewis. So this gives us
Nice.
another perspective.
Yeah.
And this is actually from a book called On Stories, a panegyric for Dorothy L. Sayers. So after she passed away, this is from 1958. I've never read the book, but it might be worthwhile referencing this and seeing if we could find a copy somewhere.
I remembered something I forgot to say. I did finally get a hold of and send an email to CJ Cherry.
Oh,
So I
good.
haven't heard back yet, but
Okay.
just sent it
Thank you for doing
yesterday,
that.
so
Oh,
we'll see
cool.
what happens.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. We can definitely loop her in at some point. So here's what Lewis actually wrote about Dorothy Sayers. This is an excerpt. She aspired to be and was at once a popular entertainer and a conscientious craftsman, like, in her degree, Chaucer, Cervantes, Shakespeare, or Moliere. I have an idea that with a very few exceptions, it is only such writers who matter much in the long run. She never sank the artist and the entertainer in the evangelist. So in other words, she never compromised her art and entertainment at the expense of her faith, as she was a Christian. So those sound like high words of praise. Maybe Lewis realized this after the fact. Hard to say. But anything else, Chris, before we transition to Barfield?
Since the earliest of these letters in 1943, letters between Lewis and Sayers, it is possible that Charles Williams, after his removal with the Oxford University Press to Oxford, brought Lewis and Sayers together. Certainly, Lewis and Sayers collaborated on a letter on the 10th anniversary of Williams' death, sent to the London Times. On the other hand, Sayers gave a series of radio talks, Christ of the Creeds, never published, at least under that title, in 1939. Lewis gave his broadcast talks that are in the Case for Christianity
The BBC
in
talks.
1941.
Right, during the war.
Perhaps their introduction was through someone at the BBC, or, of course, perhaps one of them just wrote the other. Such things do happen. In other words, as with the William Sayers friendship, this essay is being written perhaps 5 or 10 years too soon. No doubt more materials of Sayers will be forthcoming. Perhaps, wouldn't it be delightful, Walter Hooper will edit the Lewis-Sayers correspondence. Perhaps. And this is from the Myth Lore Journal, 1976.
Wow, you really did a deep dive,
Wow,
Chris.
yeah.
Good job.
And
Myth Lore. Say that again.
Myth Lore Journal of j.r.r. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, Charles William, and Mythiopoeic Literature.
Okay.
Nice.
The Mythiopoeic Society.
Mythopoeic, is that how you pronounce
Yeah.
it?
Volume 4,
1976.
number 1, Article 3.
Dorothy Sayers.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, you did better than I did. I just read Wikipedia. the
Okay.
source of all knowledge.
There's nothing wrong with
Except
open
they-
source.
Except they keep deleting everything we try to post about Tolkien Society and Tolkien Moot.
Seriously?
Yeah, we used to have a MERPCon Tolkien Moot page that listed all the guest speakers because they're published
I
authors.
think it's David Day having revenge.
Yeah.
Who's David Day?
They're
Oh boy!
they're
If I open a can
so
of
all
worms.
the we've had a lot of published authors as guest speakers, so that's supposed to be notable, right?
Yeah.
They quietly deleted all mentions of all of our guests, and now we just have like one little tiny blurb, and they moved it from literary to minor, insignificant role-playing gaming category. And
Oh
stuff.
my
They've
God.
been- somebody's been,
Nice.
yeah, and I noticed that person's stuff. Yeah, they seem to be anti-gamer.
Seriously?
So,
They're anti-fun in my book.
Well, there's always
someone.
there's always what's the Tolkien wiki that is really good.
Tolkien Gateway.
Tolkien Gateway.
Tolkien Gateway.
Yeah.
Okay. We should say, and it's been mentioned quickly by Chris, but it's worth noting that aside from literature, that Dorothy Sayers has had a huge impact on an educational movement. Basically, it's on an essay she wrote, right? One essay in which she kind of has a manifesto or kind of says, what we need to do is we need to have kids essentially go back to the 12th century in terms of what they're learning is. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I can
she's
look at
talking
that.
about grammar and logic and rhetoric.
Yeah, she's trying to resurrect the medieval
Yes,
curriculum.
right.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And in 1996, a unnamed person who lives in Moscow, Idaho, resurrected that essay into an entire book.
Right.
So
it's an indirect kind of thing.
And
where,
a school movement that
Sure.
now has 800 schools across this country.
Right.
So no small feat.
Now, as an interesting segue, I think there's a connection. So Rudolf Steiner, who I think was who knew Barfield
Yeah.
In philosophy circles, Steiner, there was a connection with Waldorf schools, and the Waldorf is also an independent kind of whole
Correct.
number
Yeah.
of schools that are out there,
And-
also kind of doing something alternatively,
Yeah.
which Hawk knows something about as well.
Steiner
Yep,
is
we've
a
worked with
central
both
theme
Montessori and
in
Waldorf.
the interactions.
Yeah.
With Owen
In this.
Barfield, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, with that,
Chris, what is the name of those 800 schools, or do they have a,
The Association
Classical.
of Classical Christian Schools.
Huh.
really? Okay.
There's two in Moscow.
it's a big
Or
deal.
There's one in Spokane Valley, one in Spokane, one in Post Falls.
If you just Google classical
Yeah.
schools movement,
Yep,
you will find lots there.
yep.
And Sayers' essay, which is not that long, I think it's 15 pages.
Yeah, it's about 15 pages.
It's a pretty good essay. It's interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think it's the be all and end
And
all.
it was written in the 40s, and it was
Well, remember too, this is the same time in which Lewis is writing
yes, that's correct.
The Silver Chair,
Uh-huh.
and in that Narnia book, he's satirizing the new movement. There was a school in Britain, it's a famous school in which the students ran the school.
Yeah.
And anyway, and so he was talking about how things could go really, really wrong. So it's that kind of, obviously you want to let the kids have ownership and involvement, but it can run amok.
Yeah.
Lord of the Flies.
Well, that's true in real life. Look at that Green College.
Yeah. So I think in a way Sayers perhaps was writing in response to a lot of more modern, at that time, educational.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Barfield, he's a kind of a giant here, isn't he? I mean, there's a lot more here that I don't really know much about, and
Yeah.
I'm interested to know what you all have found, if anything, about Owen Barfield. And all I want to say, and this is all I know, is that there's an extremely good podcast called Pints with Jack that I recommend to you all. And on this particular podcast called Pints with Jack, the C.S. Lewis podcast, the particular episode, season 4, episode 51, is called After Hours with Owen A. Barfield, the grandson of Owen Barfield and his literary executor.
Wow.
Yes.
And that's a really interesting listen. So I will put those in the notes for
Yeah.
anybody who wants to listen to it. That's all I have to say about Owen Barfield.
Barfield adopted 3 children, 2 sons, and 1 daughter. And the daughter's name was Lucy,
Oh, yes.
and was
Lucy
the
Barfield.
Lucy
was
Pevensey.
the godson of
Goddaughter?
Lewis, goddaughter of
Wow. Okay, I never connected those two
Yeah,
together.
Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Lucy Pevensey.
Lewis. Yes.
Right.
Oh.
So in
Huh.
wow.
Okay.
Shocker.
Yeah.
Huh.
Oh, the tangled web.
Yes.
And this is after Barfield had quit and gone to work in London with his relatives in a lawyer's office.
Okay, so give
yet-
us a sketch of his life here. Yeah.
So Lewis and Barfield started very young in their friendship. And I'm not sure if it was what you would consider high school or prep school.
They're both poets, weren't they? Were they
Yeah.
Writers.
They
Yeah.
both were doing writing, and they would often banter back and forth. So once they got into college, once the war was over and they got really back into college
Mhm.
formally, in the mid-20s, they started their arguments
Oh.
in what was considered the Great War.
I want to buy an argument.
And-
No, I'm sorry. This is the Department for Insults.
Yes.
and
That'll be £5.
and so this Great War lasted 7 years.
My.
A constant back and forth between Barfield, Lewis, and what's the third gentleman? Starts with an H. And
Oh, was it the Havard, the physician?
yeah, I think so. But his Barfield was going after a very specific item here. There, for over 70 years, the question of how human perception has changed and continues to change over the course of centuries would remain at the center of Barfield's thoughts. So much so that he observed that while there's an early C.S. Lewis and a later C.S. Lewis, there is only one Barfield from beginning to end, a man devoted to a single idea, the evolution of consciousness, how language reveals this evolution by serving as a fossil record of human consciousness as it existed in the past and as a hairbringer with the aid of spiritual insight into a possible future state.
So he's a philosopher.
And that's stuff that Jung,
Yes.
Skinner, and Noam Chomsky
Mm.
all had
Yep.
very interesting debates about the evolution of the brain and language and
Yeah.
what comes first and historical ramifications and can you learn stuff later. The feral child example,
Yeah.
things like
Yep.
Raised by
that.
wolves.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And this all was so
This is all
he
getting into my
was all a
psychology
contemporary. he was a contemporary of all these people and had read all their published works.
It sounds like he could go toe to toe, maybe.
Yeah.
And so Barfield's first step was to start with Lewis in his Great War and really start to hash things out.
Which Lewis probably enjoyed.
Lewis enjoyed up until 1930
Yeah.
Oh.
when he became a believer,
Uh-huh.
and then he told Barfield to be quiet about religion.
Oh. But I thought they were both. Were they not both Christians? Was Barfield not?
Barfield was a
Theosophist? Is that
Yes.
what he was?
Anthroposophist
right.
or something.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was
no,
kind of
not necessarily a Christian.
But he had a
though.
great fondness
though-
for Barfield, though.
though
right?
it- So Lewis was according to Barfield's words, a materialist,
Huh.
meaning a modernist.
That's what he was up until then.
Right.
yeah before his conversion. I think.
Yes.
So
And
they had a really lively dialogue,
Right.
these guys.
Sure.
And that he saw the progress of Lewis from
Uh-huh.
that to an idealist
I see.
to I forget the third, and then into Christianity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why he was saying, I've basically been banging one drum the whole time, and here's my main focus. Whereas Lewis, you could look at different parts of his life.
And he
That's
definitely
interesting. So there's a
Flip.
chronological twist to this then,
Yes.
too. Which you could say
Wow,
Tolkien, there's
Chris,
a
you
early...
really dug up some great meat.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, it's
Nicely done.
in this.
I
book.
know. I just
Well,
having
the
a time to
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, so that's how great these books are. I mean, they
Yeah.
are just chock full of material. They are meaty.
Gotta put that on my
This
list.
is not bloviated word count paid by the word
No.
late 1800s
No.
content. This is meat.
Well, and notably on the front, it has 4 main Inklings, right?
Mhm.
Who were
And that's
the
a
4?
lot to cover. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Barfield is one of the 4. In some ways, would you say the least well known of the main Inklings?
Yes, and some of that has to do with the fact that when he started publishing a couple books and he failed utterly,
Oh, that's too bad.
and his published works did not bring any money, and so he has a wife and a kid,
Sure.
and so he had to move off to London to go make some money.
So law was, in some ways, while he was good at it, it was really more about the
Right.
financial considerations.
Yeah.
Work to live, not.
But I mean, that's kind of sad.
Yes, and that's when there were some estranged relationships between Barfield and Lewis, like the close friendship
Yeah.
never.
But wasn't he Lewis's lawyer? I thought I've read that.
Well, I would imagine so.
Yeah.
I hadn't gotten that far.
Okay.
I
No,
had gotten up to about
right.
the war, and that's about it.
I don't
Yeah.
know much. I just
Yeah.
know that he was actually, at one point, he was Lewis's literary executor, but
Yeah.
not for, I don't know how long it was for.
Well,
also,
so
he was
that
the last Inkling to die, wasn't
so this
Yes.
this also explains Barfield moved to Wheaton College, and
Oh.
this is why the C.S. Lewis
he? Why the...
library is at Wheaton.
Wow. I've been there.
Yeah,
It's
Where's that?
So it's in Chicago,
Oh, okay.
It's nearby.
a suburb of Chicago.
suburb of
yeah.
Chicago, and it's called the Wade Center.
Yeah.
And they actually, if you ever get there, it has the
One-
wardrobe.
One of these days.
Yeah.
It has the wardrobe that Jack and Warnie Lewis grew up with in their house.
Mm.
Really?
Yeah.
And so, whether or not that was what Lewis was thinking of when he composed the line "The Witch's Wardrobe," he certainly was thinking of a wardrobe like that.
Yeah.
And yes, I did look to see if there's a wall in the back.
Was there?
Yes.
With
Oh.
the many other handprints that were
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so that's
So
the
that
connection.
that makes
He
makes
goes-
perfect sense now, because I never
Wow.
drew that connection of, well,
He moved to
why is
America.
this British giant, all of his works sitting in a library in
Well, actually, yeah.
Chicago?
Yeah.
Well, also some of
Yeah.
Tolkien's manuscripts are in
Yeah.
Marquette University, right?
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, why is that? Does anybody know?
Marquette. They
Yes.
purchased it early
I mean,
on.
Marquette
think
is
so.
known as a pretty good school, but,
Yeah.
It was.
you know,
There was, I think, a leading professor or somebody who was the head of a department there who said, "Look," and this was back in I think the
Before
60s.
Tolkien was popular, he had the vision
Yeah.
to try to preserve it.
We need
Yeah.
to, yes. It would have been, maybe it was after,
Yeah.
it was while Tolkien was still alive. I think he bought the manuscripts from Tolkien.
Yeah,
Probably cheaply too.
Oh, yeah.
Tolkien
Yeah.
didn't
Or
think it
something,
was-
yeah, Tolkien needed money for.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the great irony, right? Authors rarely see the profits from their own works in their lifetimes.
Artists in general,
Yeah.
rarely.
Yeah. There's that stereotype of the starving artist.
Yeah.
So was he? When did he die then?
He died in 1997 at
97.
age
Oh my.
99.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
1997. Can you imagine? Even you were alive then, Anthony.
Yeah, I was in
He
starting
almost
kindergarten.
made it to another century.
Yeah.
Like another
Yes.
century.
Yeah.
It
Would have
would've-
spanned 3 centuries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could sit around this table with us, and you know, and he could say, Gary.
Poppycock.
How's it going, young man up there?
Yeah.
So you're just.
he was born, what?
1898. He was born just
23 years before my father was.
wow.
Wow.
Yeah, he was born. He was born within a few days of C.S. Lewis. So they were
10 days.
10 days.
Wow. 1898 to 1997.
So they were schoolmates, absolutely.
Wow. So there's probably a lot more here that we're not going to get to, but there is a website, owenbarfield.org,
Uh-huh.
the first and last Inkling.
And it has some.
Wow. Right, so this is worth doing some digging into.
Yep.
You know. So these people, what I really respect about them is they didn't all agree on everything, but they still liked each other.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's something that's been kind of lost of late.
Yes.
And that
Yeah.
and that they would maintain a relationship, that Barfield would come back up out of London to go see his friend in
Wow.
the country several times a year, that Lucy would be a goddaughter that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, normally that only happens if the other
Family
party
members.
is a
Oh.
Christian.
Yeah.
And it's like, huh?
Wow.
What happened here? Did Barfield go soft?
Well, he wasn't an atheist, but it sounds
No.
like he was, well,
He was kind of
theosophist. There's
a spiritualist.
Yes,
He was
yes,
spiritualist.
maybe more of a
Yeah.
spiritualist. Yeah.
yeah. He was really a philologist, I think, similar to Tolkien.
That would be the common
Yes.
thread.
And yeah, the book also goes into detail about how Barfield's theories influenced Tolkien's views on the nature and evolution of language and played a hand in the shaping of his own invented tongues.
Really?
In The
Yes,
Hobbit, for example,
that's correct.
Tolkien writes of Bilbo spying the dragon's treasure that there are no words left to express his, Bilbo's, staggerment, since men changed the language that they learned of elves in the days when all the world was wonderful. A very Barfieldian observation. Still, Tolkien's and Barfield's views on language diverged in many ways. For Tolkien, ancient semantic unity describes the state. Ancient semantic unity, I think, is a concept that Barfield believed in. Kind of like how before language, we were more in touch with the physical world and around us.
Ancient semantic. What was it?
Unity.
Okay.
So for Tolkien, ancient semantic unity describes the state of language in Eden before the metaphysical catastrophe of the fall and its aftermath, expressed mythically in the story of Babel. For Barfield, the same term describes the state of language at the dawn of the evolution of consciousness, which will conclude in the reacquisition by language of its primordial unity and purity. Tolkien, an Orthodox Christian, believed that this second golden age will arrive only when time itself vanishes in the new heaven and new earth, according to the Book of Revelation. It is not a part of human history, but an aspect of eternity. So yeah, I think there was definitely some differences in their beliefs about language. Partly, I think, also based on their religious and philosophical
Sure.
beliefs.
But they were fascinated by the same
Topic.
topic, and that's what drew them together.
Yeah.
Barfield would be considered by me to be an evolutionary post-millennialist.
Right.
Meaning,
And linguist.
meaning that the modernism is going to win the day.
Right. It's just going to be this
eventually,
golden age that kind of just
that gets better and better
Sure,
and
sure.
better. And well,
It's
you know,
interesting because when you look at language and how one of my I'll make this short, but one of my pet peeves as a teacher and as an observer of American culture is that words have become hypersexualized,
Yeah.
where you can't use an English word anymore for a broader range of meanings because now it only means one thing. And that's true actually not only of becoming sexualized when it didn't used to only mean that, but it's true even of words just in general where you have and of course language does change and that's okay, but you have it in some ways a hollowing out of words, or there's less meaning and less knowledge of vocabulary, less reading. So anyway, I won't go on any further on that.
Well,
soapbox.
in that soapbox,
Here, I give my soapbox to Chris.
he says instead, Barfield proposes that the form of a poem unfolds in the reader's consciousness and is different for each reader. He's talking about the structure of poetry. That every word in a poem is the final objective record for each person of the whole series of thoughts or sense impressions received by him every time he has spoken or heard the word, and that the art of poetry consists in the juxtaposition of these thoughts or sense impressions. That is to say, the poet's material is in itself memory. Contra Bell, another philosopher, and his disciples, a poem does not mean only how it says. It means what each reader reads in it when he brings his full experience to bear upon it.
Yeah, our life filters.
That leads ineluctably to the unstated but implicit conclusion that words transmit more than sound, even more than lexical meaning, more that is than the sort of information one might find in the dictionary. Words are catch basins of experience, fingerprints and footprints of the past that the literary detective may scrutinize in order to sleuth out the
Yes.
history of human consciousness.
And this is why Tolkien would be like, hey, you know what? We've got different viewpoints, but that is so fascinating.
Yeah.
Because he would be all over that.
Yep.
The idea that you could look at a word and say, we can use this word to follow its footprints back in time to what this...
Evolutionary.
And so why is this, why would he come to these types of conclusions? Because the dean of the college that both Lewis and Barfield are part of is the fourth OED editor.
Ah,
Oh.
okay. Thanks, Chris, for sharing a lot. Anthony, Gary, or Hawk, any other comments on Owen Barfield?
That was great, though. Thank you,
Mhm.
Chris.
I think the opposite opinion would have been expressed by Sir Isaac Newton, who once said, "Poetry is a kind of ingenious nonsense." But I don't think he wrote any poetry.
I
So
will quote from the Bulldog in The Mission's Nephew. I object very strongly to that remark.
Was that his retort to Shakespeare?
I don't know.
Or maybe to
I'd have to look at the context.
Lewis Carroll.
Well, Lewis Carroll lived long after
Yeah.
that, so.
Yeah, true. Well, all right. Shall we? If there's nothing else, let's move on to the next letter of Tolkien.
Oh, yes.
And as I said before, preparing next month to do a read if you can, if you have time, on C.S. Lewis specifically as an Inkling, the relationship between the two guys.
I'll be working on the module.
And Hawk has a pass because he'll be working on the module Escape from
For a
Numenor.
Tolkien moot?
But the rest of you, there's no escape.
There's no escape.
Do have a good look at. We've talked about this before because Lewis and Tolkien were such an influence on each other, but we are looking at Tolkien and his influence on Jack as an aspect of
yeah.
this discussion. Because while there would probably be no Lord of the Rings without C.S. Lewis encouraging his friend Tolkien to keep writing,
13 years.
we want we want to look at the less well-known influence of Tolkien on Lewis. So that's what we'll be tying into next month. All right. Hawk, would you like to read from letter 202?
All right.
I think.
Yeah,
that's
202.
202. Okay.
Yep.
Great.
202. From a letter to Christopher and Faith Tolkien, 11th of September, 1957. My heart and mind is in the Silmarillion, but I have not had much time for it. It may amuse you to hear that, unsolicited. I suddenly found myself the winner of the International Fantasy Award, presented, as it says, as a fitting climax to the 15th World Science Fiction Convention. It's Worldcon, isn't it? Or,
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
is it? No, I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know if it's the same one or not. I think it's a different one.
I mean, he was the first Gandalf Grandmaster, right?
Yeah, yeah. What it boiled down to was a lunch at the Criterion yesterday with speeches and the handing over an absurd trophy. A massive model of an upended space rocket combined with a Ronson lighter. But the speeches were far more intelligent, especially that of the introducer, Clemence Dane. A massive woman of almost Sitwellian presence. I don't know the Sitwellian
Oh,
reference.
wow.
Look it up.
Sitwell had, I think, one sister. Well, the Sitwellian is a family of one sister and two brothers who wrote in the 20s, early 30s, or something like that, and they were basically still kind of Victorian,
Yeah.
you know, outlook and everything else. And I don't know if I had, maybe she was very large, but I don't know if she was.
Oh, Sitwellian.
Yeah, Sitwellian.
Oh, not Sidwellian.
Sitwellian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sit, yes.
They were a big deal at one time in the early 20th century.
Yeah.
Capitalized S, Itewellian.
Right. Okay.
Sir Stanley himself was present. Not having any immediate use for the trophy, say publicity equals sales equals cash, I deposited it in the window of 40 Museum Street. The pawn shop? Did he just pawn it? Is that what he did?
Did he really sell it as like for?
Wow.
He flogged it. That's what he did. He went and sold it. I've got this nice trophy.
A backwash from the convention was a visitor from an American film agent, one of the adjudicating panel, who drove out all the way in a taxi from London to see me last week, filling 76S Anfield
That's his
with
house.
strange men and stranger women. I thought the taxi would never stop disgorging. But this Mr. Ackerman brought some really astonishingly good pictures, Rackham rather than Disney,
Yes,
Yeah.
and some remarkable color photographs. They have apparently toured America shooting mountain and desert scenes that seem to fit the story. The storyline, capital S, capital L, or scenario, capital S, was, however, on a lower level. In fact, bad.
Oh.
But it looks as if business might be done. Stanley, you and I have agreed on our policy, art or cash. Either very profitable terms indeed, or absolute author's veto on objectionable features or alterations.
Wow.
So he's talking about the proposed film treatment.
Yeah. So let's have what's a discussion point from letter 202 that you guys want to follow up on?
Arthur
Well,
Rackham.
he had to make a living, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Just the other letters.
Yeah.
What was
He was
the
very conscious of during that time.
I better go bring him.
Is that more?
Yeah.
What was the equation he said? Publicity equals
Sales equals cash.
cash.
Yeah.
Why did he sell it though?
Well, it sounded like.
for his ticket back home or
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Right? That reminds me, there's this great moment where Sir Ian McKellen was filming some other movie. Or no, actually it was a stage play. And he had to dress up as a homeless man.
Oh really?
And during a break during the performance, he stepped outside the theater and was sitting on a bench on a busy street. And he was just sitting there taking a break. And a woman came along and gave him money.
Oh really? Without realizing it was Ian McKellen. That's hilarious.
I know. You can look it
Yeah.
up. It's pretty funny.
Then I'm.
He commented on that. Some woman gave me a £5 note thinking I was homeless. Anyway, Sir
But-
Ian McKellen, yeah. It
Yeah.
really happened. He's dressed up as a homeless man, taking a break from his theater, and sitting there, and a woman gave him some money.
Yeah. But on a more serious note, I found the first sentence interesting. My heart and mind is in the Silmarillion, but I have not had much time for it. Oh man, if he had the time and the money, or the without distraction to work on that.
There's a
Oh.
patron who can just say, Tolkien, you no longer need to teach another
Then we
year.
would have needed 2 Christopher Tolkiens to go through all his
Yeah.
Yeah.
files.
He would have had to have been an immortal elf to finish that.
That's where Rackham
But, yeah.
is striking a bell. Right now I'm reading through Brothers Grimm with my children. And
Oh, yeah?
the annotated Brothers Grimm that I have from the library is full of Rackham artistry.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I
he
recognize it.
died in 1939. So why is this American
Just means in the style.
looking at Rackham 1957? He's been dead a couple of years.
Well, he did
Just
some.
mean on the style of it. He's just saying.
Yeah,
that
well,
compared to Disney.
Probably.
He just meant that style.
Oh, yeah,
just
yeah,
as
yeah.
a reference.
Yeah,
Rackham rather than Disney.
Yeah.
yeah, I suppose.
He was just referencing the style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know how he felt about Disney.
Yeah. Yeah. It's.
But it's clear I mean, from that it sounds like he liked Rackham better than
Oh, sure.
Disney.
Yeah.
So,
Rackham's style is
yeah,
very European.
right.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
so that tells you what kind of animation he would have been okay with,
Yeah.
Which makes me sad because.
which is relevant to our opening conversation.
Yeah.
Talking about anime and such.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Tied it all together.
Nicely done. Well, and that's probably a good. So heart and soul were.
His heart and mind were
Heart
in,
and mind were on the Silmarillion.
but alas,
Alas, indeed.
he didn't have much time for it at that time.
I think it's interesting because this is getting on towards the. What was the date on that letter?
1957. So.
Okay, well, he's still got another 15, 16 years to live. But he's finding it's that relationship with his own fame. He wants his books to be published. He wants people to read, but
He hates having to compromise on being the artist.
Yeah.
Yeah, understand. It's always the tension.
it is.
Poor starving artist who's true to his work, or fame and fortune and feed your kids and put them through college.
Yeah, I watched an interview with George R.R. Martin. He once said, "A friend once told me to seek fortune first and then fame."
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, he did not pawn it off.
Okay.
It is.
Is that a museum? It
That
says
is
40 Museum
the
Street.
History of Science Museum
Okay,
for
all right.
the University
So,
of Oxford.
He sold
Which
it. He
probably
immediately
still
sold
gets-
it to the museum.
Yes.
Okay.
Or did he give it to
So
him?
Although,
he may have
just a
just given
step
it.
up from the pawn shop.
Yeah.
So what is this museum called? The history. What
Well, he
was it?
said sold.
The,
History of
I
science.
deposited it in the window of
Oh, okay.
History of Science Museum.
All right.
Oh, well,
as,
it's an
it-
education.
as it's a science fiction convention
Okay.
Yeah.
award.
All right.
So why was he awarded a science fiction convention? Right? Was it kind of the same?
Back then, I think it
Fantasy,
wasn't.
sci-fi is
Fantasy
often lumped
sci-fi
together.
is
Yeah,
the
that's
same.
true.
And I think
When you went to the bookstores at B. Dalton and Walden Books, fantasy and sci-fi were
Yeah.
the same shelves. They didn't
Yeah.
separate the two.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. we still see some of that today, but it seems like it's more differentiated now.
It's hard to even find bookshelves anymore.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
In a store.
An American film agent is a backwash.
Well, the British film agents weren't that much better because didn't the Beatles want to star in a movie?
Yeah, the Beatles wanted to make
They-
an adaptation.
They did do their Yellow Submarine.
We all did. Can you imagine? Yeah, can you imagine the Beatles made Lord of the Rings?
Oh no, we don't want to.
Hey, Paul McCartney turned 80 today.
Let's not.
Let's just say it wouldn't have been Longbottom Leaf. It would have been something else.
Yeah.
I can't find anything on that. I really would love to know what happened to that trophy, but
It may still be there.
maybe in some dusty back room. Yeah. Okay.
That's funny.
Well, I think we've come to kind of our epilogue here.
Okay.
We've got about 15 minutes, I think.
Well, I know. And I
Yeah,
think
but it's
Hawk's
okay
gonna
to end. Or I have to.
Leaving
I'm,
room.
I'm trying to get on the road to Seattle.
Going
I
to
got to
Seattle.
drop
Oh,
off
you're
the
going to
dog
Seattle.
and
Oh.
Yep.
go see my wife after her post-op and all that.
Oh, how's she doing?
Trying
okay?
to heal. She's been having complications.
No,
so
I'm sorry. Well,
It's important I get
hope
out
she gets
there.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'll be coming back with her the first week of July.
So, yeah. And, happy anniversary in
Thank you.
Oh, happy
Thank
anniversary.
you.
early.
Yep, thank you, and happy trails to you
Thank
Tuesday.
you. Yes, I'm embarking on a 33-day journey across this great
33.
Wow.
continent of ours. Yes.
So you'll
How
be done
long
with
is it?
the
33.
33 days,
tween
Happy
years,
Saturday.
your irresponsible tween years to 33.
Yes, as I drive, I shall regress in age. No. Alas, I will not be driving some red Beamer down the highway with my lack of hair flowing in the wind. I will be in a minivan with my children singing musicals at the top of their lungs.
At least they can sing though, because we've
Right.
been at their musicals and
Yes.
your kids can actually sing.
Yes, they can.
So that's not as painful
It's
as some
not.
parents.
It's
Oh,
true.
boy.
I have my JBL speakers I can put on my head and
Yeah.
listen to.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, help me.
So yeah, we'll see you all next for Tolkien
We'll
Society.
see you at Tolkien
Tolkien
18.
Moot. Yes,
Woohoo!
I signed-
July 30th.
I signed up.
Woot woot.
Can't wait.
Woot woot at the moot.
I was updating the Tolkien Moot website there, and I did a quick Wikipedia update to just mention the date and location change.
Wonderful.
We'll see if they delete it.
Escape from Numenor. Numenor.
Yeah, I still need to make that announcement. I don't think I have.
Right.
Or maybe I don't know. We'll
I
see.
mean, I think it's going to be amazing.
I think so too.
okay.
I can't wait.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you might make it, or not.
Yeah.
Real
boy.
risk is part
Yeah.
of real play.
That's right.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Here, here.
There's no
here, here.
guarantee.
Right.
Yep. Cool. All right. Thank you, everybody. It's great to see you all. Travel well.
Thanks for being in person.
So
guys.
glad you
Yeah,
made
thanks.
it in person.
Good to see you.
Gary, one of these days we'll somehow manage to make some kind of connection.
Yeah, get you
Yeah,
over.
sure.
Mountain Home is not. It's a little far south of I-90 though, right?
Yeah, it is. It's along I-84.
Okay.
It's 40 miles southeast of Boise.
Okay.
Yeah, isn't it? Is it near the McKay split, where you go either up into the mountains, or McCall split, where you go up into the mountains, or you go down to Boise?
No, it's
No.
east.
No, this
southeast
is
of
pretty
that.
flat, by the way.
Oh, so you're already down near. Okay,
Yeah,
so it's
we're
after.
in, what
Yeah,
they
it's
call
after.
Treasure
Do you know
Valley.
the split I'm talking about, where you're coming down
Yeah.
from Lewiston through the mountains, and then at McCall, I think it splits. You can either go east into the mountains or west into the plains, basically.
Yeah, I can envision it, but when we came here, we went a different route.
Okay.
We went Tri-Cities, turned off 90. at
Oh, you went the other way,
Tri-Cities,
Blue
and
Mountains.
then
Okay.
went and caught.
What?
Blue-
And
Blue
you
Mountains?
didn't stop
Aaron
by?
Lewin? What?
Yeah, that's the Blue Mountains
Yeah, I
there,
know, I know.
between Tri-City and.
Wait, that means
Boise.
we're in Beleriand.
Yeah.
Well, my mother-in-law just bought a place in Mesquite, Nevada, so
So was I in
so you
Mordor?
will come. I will be going through there on a regular basis.
Oh, nice.
Riding
You,
in the
you know, I grew up
desert.
working summers in a mine, right?
Oh yeah, you were a
And
dwarf.
up in this near the Sato.
They call it a mine.
Between Stanley and that's
The
really
mines.
is a mine, between Stanley and Chalice, Idaho.
The mines of Moria.
Up around 9,000 feet above sea level.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting because I meet people from Chalice.
Yeah, so we were midway between Chalice and Stanley, and so I grew up in the 70s and 80s working a gold mine underground up there as a kid, and my grandfather before me, and
Wow.
his father before him, and it's
Family miners.
now my uncle, you know, so yeah, multiple generations
Wait, are
mining.
you really just an oversized dwarf?
10,
Yeah.
10 levels.
Yeah, I think he is.
Well, I played one on that show.
What
It's
show?
a glandular condition, I tell you, I'm a dwarf! As a Spartan show's Legends Through Shadow, and I played Hrandum, the 6'7" dwarf. And I
I
had a
gotta look
big
this up.
beard and everything, and everybody's like, "You're not a dwarf." I am a dwarf. My mother says I had a glandular condition.
I gotta look this up.
I think there's only one episode available, unfortunately. So, but we were front page on Twitch, and we were getting Microsoft sponsorship and all of that.
Wow,
so
that's
that was
cool.
fun. Yeah. All right, wherever you may be well. Namarie.
Namarie. Namarie.